Miriam, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing? You all right?
I'm good. I was just saying I'm a bit jet lagged, so...
You've been away?
Yeah.
Where have you been?
I did like an American road trip, so I went to we just ended in Miami, but yeah.
Working or vacation?
Vacation, yeah.
Oh,
It's very
nice.
American. Vacation.
Well, let's get into your work then. So if you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is you do.
Oh my god, this is hard. 'Cause no one asked me that, and I was just saying I'm always the one asking the question, so it's really weird to even think about it. But so I'm a sports reporter at Sky Sports News. Before that, I was at the BBC Sport for almost 6 years, and my actual job is diversity and inclusion reporter. So it's basically it's kind of like what I make of it, but long form pieces, features, and documentaries. And it could be anything that fits into that remit. It could be about race, could be about sexuality, it could be about health. I get to cover so much different stuff. I think it's I'm biased, but I think it's the most interesting sides of sport, because it's the real human interest stories. And I love it.
So, did you study in the area of reporting, and is that what you went to university and did, or?
Well, I grew up in Sheffield, and from being 10, athletics was my whole life. I was a sprinter. I used to train with Tony Minicello, so Jess Ennis and that group, and then another sprint coach for a bit in Sheffield, and it was
So you were high performance, high level?
Yeah, I had a weird athletics career. I think that I had a lot of potential. I know everyone says that, but I had a kidney disease when I was younger.
Right.
And was training at that level in that group whilst also being on chemotherapy. So I don't think I ever really reached my full potential, and had a lot of health issues linked to that and injuries. But it was a huge part of my life, my brother's life. Two of my brothers have gone on to represent GB juniors, and they've got full track scholarships to live in America and stuff. And my grandparents actually met at a track in Hillsborough.
Wow.
And my mum was a sprinter, so it was always going to be, I think, a big part of our lives. So yeah, it was sports always been there, really.
You're wired that way then. It's in the family.
And also my dad was he was born in Pakistan. I think he came here when he was, I don't know, people tell me different things all the time. Sometimes people came when he was 8, sometimes it's 10. But football, I think, was his way of really assimilating, and he's got some incredible stories. He scouted for Sheffield United and worked there for a few years, and played for Sheffield Football Club, and has just been, his whole life as well was football. And so we grew up from being 4 to about 6 when he moved to the States. We just grew up going to Bramall Lane every weekend, and I hated it. I just hated it. I didn't hate football, but I hated being around just the crowds that you sometimes, and it's not obviously just Bramall Lane, it's I still don't love it now, men's football grounds. But yeah, I think then my dad was in America for years, so I think my mum just was you're gonna be athletes.
Yeah.
I did play a bit of football at school, but it was always athletics.
Do you think your experiences the ones at Bramall Lane that you talk about have encouraged you and give you a desire to go into inclusion and diversity, or?
Yeah, I think so, because my own links to being racialised have come from sport, whether that's that really early on, I heard the P word for the first time at Bramall Lane, or, just growing up and not seeing myself represented in any sports as a South Asian woman or a mixed South Asian woman. I think that's, yeah. And also just that curiosity, and sometimes people are how have you ended up doing this job in particular? And I think it was just different passions coming together. So I was just in America on a civil rights history road trip, and I wrote my dissertation on that, and police brutality in the civil rights movement, and that is so linked to what I do now in really different ways. But I think those two worlds coming together is just really interesting.
Do you you clearly have a passion for what you do, but do you enjoy it? Because is there not a lot of negativity around the areas that you are reporting on and studying?
Yeah, I think sometimes you forget how hard it is because obviously it's other people's stories that I'm telling, but I relate to a lot of it, I guess, and I think you can take on a lot of it, and it is hard, but I think when you know something's important, and I think when you know those stories aren't really being told anywhere else, like that's why I do it, and that's why I love it, and yeah, but it is hard, yeah.
It has a huge importance, the topics that you report on. We'll come to reporting a little later on, but let's talk about, you grew up in Sheffield. Tell me about Sheffield.
Yeah, I think I've only really recently started thinking about how much I love Sheffield because I moved back here a couple of years ago, and I was like, it's actually, I've lived in Manchester, I've lived in London, and it's like nowhere else. And I think I'm so proud to be from Sheffield. Like people like take the mick out of me because I just will go on and on and on about how proud I am to be from Sheffield, and like my house is covered in like Hendo's things, and it's just something that I feel like not a lot of people get that about their hometowns, and I think the more time I spend away from it, the more I'm like, I love it here and love coming back.
We're certainly a proud city.
Yeah.
I think that's part reason why my business works.
Yeah.
Everyone's so goddamn proud of Sheffield for whatever reason. It's and we celebrate it, and it's great, and everyone has that in common.
Yeah. I think that's what it is, isn't it? It's the people, and it's like, you can just be walking down the street and someone will come up to you and tell you a story, and it's like, that's my mum and my granddad, they really embody that. They'll talk to anyone and they'll talk to them for ages, and it just always feels like home, no matter where you are, I think, in the city. And like I grew up in like the south of the city, but my dad lived in Nether Edge, and that's like got a massive South Asian community. But then my granddad lives in Chapeltown, and my mum grew up in Ecclesfield, so like I've really got to. And then I was obviously training like 5 days a week in Attercliffe, and I've worked about 100 jobs in Meadowhall, so I think like getting to explore the whole city has really like made me who I am. So yeah,
it's great to celebrate what you did previous and your journey and everything, and we'll talk about your journey. But I noticed on your Instagram that you've got what you do currently, and then you've got build a bear stuff. Build a bear stuffing. Is that one of the jobs in Meadowhall?
That was the Meadowhall job, and that was like one of my favourite jobs ever. And I genuinely think like, so obviously there are a lot of people that work in Build a Bear. I don't know what it's like now. This was like 10, 12 years ago. But when you go in and you go and get your bear and then you get it stuffed with that big machine, that was my job. Yeah. And like, obviously I love my job now, but like stuffing bears for a living is so fun, and all these kids are really happy, and you like get them to kiss little heart and do a little spin around, and and I think, doing jobs like that, I think there's probably not loads of I think a lot of journalism is like privately educated people who probably didn't need to do jobs like that on the weekend, and being able to do jobs like that. I worked at Hollister, so I had to say hello, welcome to the pier to people. I worked at Sports Direct.
Do you think that's why you've got it? Do you think that's why you include it on your Instagram bio? Because it's advocating that to become a reporter, a journalist, you can come from anywhere. Yeah,
I think it's a bit of that and a bit of just being so proud of being a stuffer at Build-A-Bear, but like
you really do.
I'm hoping that sometimes someone will ask me about it, which thank you for asking me.
No, I've got 2 little girls now, and my eldest has got about 3 Build-A-Bears. They're not cheap.
They're not. That discount came in handy.
Yeah. Right then, so let's go into your role. So just remind me what the title of your role, because I keep saying reporter and then you've said journalism. What's your actual role?
Yeah, so I'm a reporter. That's like my role. It's diversity and inclusion reporter, and I guess like that fits under like the journalism umbrella.
Yeah.
So it's just sport, just Sky Sports News, and I guess it's a really, really unique role because I don't do any of like the daily news stuff unless there's like a big kind of DEI story. that I can react to.
DEI.
Yeah, diversity, equality, inclusion.
Got you.
Sorry, I shouldn't talk like that. Unless there's like a big story and I'm reacting to something that's happened, it's generally like off diary, documentaries, long form features. So tomorrow, I don't know when this is coming out, but tomorrow I'm interviewing a football player, England's first black captain on the women's side, about MS.
Right.
And then next week, you know, a few weeks ago, actually I can't say
Yeah, don't. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Yeah.
So do you organise your own diary? Tell me what the day-to-day looks like and then the week on week. So do you organise your own diary and then, or do a bit of research and present that to Sky, say, look, I've got this story, shall we go with it? Tell us how it looks day to day.
So I work in a team called the Bespoke Content Team. So there's like assistant producers, like maybe 3 or 4 of them, my producer who's like the head of the team, and then 2 of us reporters, there's 2 DEI reporters. And we basically like have projects that we work on long term, or like I'll pitch projects. So most of what I'm working on is like stuff that I've pitched. So I'm working on a documentary about ADHD in the sport at the moment, which like I think my producer he was like, you've got ADHD, like why don't we like use that and you can do a piece on it, and it's gone bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to be like, that's a really fun one to work on. So day to day, like every day is different. Like I could be researching, I could be writing an article, I spend so much time, honestly. I think like you were going to ask this, but a lot of my time is spent calling agents and building relationships with sport agents, and making sure like they know who I am, like they can trust me with their clients' stories, because I think we live in a time where like a lot of sports people, if they want to share a story, they'll just go on social media and do it themselves. And I think our job is to like make sure that those agents can trust us to do it. So I spend a lot of time like chasing people, sending emails, like setting up shoots.
You've got the perception of such an interesting story, and you know people would benefit from it, but that individual that you sort of want to tell their story has to be ready, has to be open to it. And this day and age, social media, you get trolls, and it's always difficult to tell a story about yourself, innit? So especially a tough one. So I guess you've got a hard role trying to get people to tell their story.
I think that's where like sports journalism really differs from news journalism, because like a lot of the time we have to rely on sports people to tell their stories, or like that will set the agenda for the news. Whereas in news, like that's not always the case. Like you don't have, you don't just walk up to someone in the street and be like, do you want to talk about ADHD? Do you want to talk about this or that? Like, so I think that's where sports journalism, like you have to rely on people to share those stories, which is difficult, but like really, the beauty of the job for me. Yeah.
What traits do you need then to be a reporter? Because you must be confident. You must be.
No.
No?
People always say to me like that I'm not confident. That's like always feedback I get from everyone.
So you must overcome that with being so awesome at being relatable, compassionate. There's got to be something attractive about your personality that allows people to open up to you.
Yeah, I think compassion is so crucial, and I think that's probably why I've done well, because I don't know, I don't feel like loads of people like lead with compassion, and I think like that's the most important thing to do if you're asking someone to share these stories. And I think also like I can relate to a lot of stuff. Like I've been through a lot of stuff in my life that has meant I've been able to relate to people when I'm interviewing them in a way. But I also think creativity, like you have to be so creative all the time. Like I got told at uni, so I did my master's in broadcast journalism at Sheffield, and like every week they were like, ideas are your currency, like you have to just be so creative. And I'm really lucky, I think, with my ADHD that I'm like always like thinking of new ideas. Sometimes I get distracted and I have to like go back and focus on what I'm working on, but yeah, I think that's why I've done well, because I'm always thinking of XYZ.
Do you need to be positive around these areas as well? So you might be talking, the discussion might be excuse me, the discussion might be around something negative, but you have to shine a positive light on it.
Yeah, I think like I'm working on a series at the moment that won't be out when this is out, but a huge part of it is destigmatizing the topic and like taking away shame from those conversations. And I think, you know, when you work in the media, you take for granted like how important the media is and how much responsibility you have, because especially if you're working on a big platform, because you're literally, you know, leading that agenda. And if someone, so many times like people send me messages like, oh, I googled this and like your article came up, and you forget like, you know, that's really powerful, but a lot of responsibility comes with it as well. So yeah.
It is interesting. I just find it so interesting because your topics are what they are.
Yeah.
You work with a certain group of people that find it difficult to, maybe not everyone does, but I find it fascinating how you twist those stories and shine a positive light on it. And I'm just trying to delve into the traits and the attributes of you that because you've got to be skilled. I'm blowing smoke here, but you've got to be skilled to make that happen, and then, like you say, put a positive light on it, and because people benefit from other people's stories. That's the whole idea, right?
Yeah, and I think
your agenda is always to get some good from something, isn't it?
Yeah, because I think, and that's why I love my job so much, because I'm, you know, like I worked on an incredible series last year called Real Talk, and it's a podcast, and it just won like Podcast of the Year at the Broadcast Sports Awards. But I think why it worked is because we spoke about things that no one was speaking about in sports media. So grief, OCD, like sexual harassment, pelvic floor health, like things that you don't always speak about, right? And yeah, like you need compassion to have those stories. Like I spent the interviews talking about grief, like I was crying for half of them. Do you know what I mean? Because the things that people spoke about were so triggering, and I didn't realise until after that's what was happening. But I think being able to share and bounce off people in those moments is really special and something that is like a great privilege, you know. But also, I think my job's easy because I think those people had never been asked about it. And so given an hour to just talk about that and not really talk about playing football at Man City or playing rugby for England meant that they really had time and space for the first time to just think about their grief and delve into it. And yeah, like that's incredible to be able to sit through and be part of.
You've mentioned ADHD twice, so this sort of it's been my perception of ADHD and all things around that. Initially they were like a negative thing. Oh, ADHD, you may have this.
Yeah.
Then like almost recently, it's like, oh, there's a lot of positives that come from ADHD. What's your perception of it? What you're almost celebrating it, and I like that.
Yeah, like I think you have to be careful celebrating it, because a lot of people say it's a superpower, and I get that, but it can also be really debilitating, right? And I think we all deal with it in different ways. And I do think, like, you know, I got diagnosed like really late in life, and I think I thought I was like a little bit ADHD. I was like, I've just got a sprinkle of it. No, like I'm ADHD, like super ADHD. And like they give you a score. They give you like a big diagnosis letter, and I just sent it to my girlfriend. I was like, can you read it? I'm not reading all that. Can you read it? Which is like a good example. And she was like, babe, did you know you're like actually like really ADHD, like in the top few percent? And I was like, I had no idea. But when you think back to like your childhood and some of the stuff I was doing as a child, as a teenager, I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, like I think now in my job, I do really celebrate it because it's really helped me. And I think like
does it benefit you more than it pulls you down?
I wouldn't say that. And you don't see the sides that pull you down, and there are times where I wish I didn't have it, like, but it's definitely helped me. It helps me connect with people, I think, and I think that's been so crucial for my job. And I think because you're always like 10 steps ahead in your brain, like we'll be having a conversation and I'll be like thinking of things in 10 steps ahead. I'm like that with my work and like my ideas, like I just said, but sometimes you need to be like focused on what you're doing now instead of like what ideas you've got in the future. So yeah.
And I suppose when you're reporting live, you need to be in the now, don't you?
That's the hardest bit for me because I went to the Olympics last year to report, and like I've done like little bits of live reporting. Like I've started in radio a few years ago, so I've been doing it for a while, but not ever regularly. So I was never like match fit, and I was so nervous about going to the Olympics and doing live reporting because something about being live is terrifying. Like I also swear a lot, and like I don't think I'm going to swear right now, but like you never know when you've got ADHD, right? So I think when you're like most people can like go in the zone, and I really struggle with that. And like in my sport, in my athletics, I also really struggled with that, and I think that comes from ADHD. But like if you're reporting on something, like the littlest thing can distract you when you're live, and it does with me. I'm not gonna lie, like it does. Do you know what I mean? But I think for me, I just learned like you have to. For me, the things that really helped me were like not having my phone anywhere near me when I was live reporting, because I think I thought I was just going to forget everything, because you do forget stuff with ADHD. But you took my phone away and I could talk for like 10 minutes about a 100-metre race or the history of like a specific race in the 100 metres. So I learnt a lot from the Olympics.
Is there any examples where something's gone wrong then?
There's a lot of wasps in Paris last year. And it was getting to me because I'm like super scared of wasps, and like.
So that's not only on your brain while you're recording, but your eyes go into them, and
yeah, and it got to the point where like I just had to make jokes about it with the presenters because that's all I could do. Because I looked at my producer and I was like, I'm really scared that if a wasp comes near me, I'll just walk off. And he was like, don't do that. I was like, don't do that, please. But yeah, like there were times where I think. I was lucky in Paris because I had a producer with me a lot of the time, and like, you know, if loads of people are walking past you at a stadium or like there's someone shouting behind you, I think there was also times where I could hyper focus and just be like, I'm looking at the camera, I'm listening to who's in my ear, I don't give a shit who's am I allowed to swear?
It's done now.
I don't care who's behind me. So there's pros and cons, but it's scary. Like it really scares me, and I think
so from the outside perspective, I just assume that every reporter, journalist has this super confidence, and not ego's the wrong word, but do you know what I mean? Like no stage fright, like just I don't know. I thought you needed to be a particular person, and you're telling me that you're not that person, and that opens it up to so many people, and that's really great. I used to, when I were at university, I studied sports development, and obviously at university you're often presenting, aren't you? Whether it just be a presentation or whatever, in front of masses, really, at a fairly young age, I suppose. And I remember thinking, because I weren't good at presenting, you know, I used to go bright red in the face. My content would be decent, but I don't know, I was overcome by nerves, and you could see it. And I looked at some people that were just naturals, and I used to think I feel normal because I feel pressure. I was almost thinking you have to not be normal or understand social cues to be that confident presenting something that's like a fake initiative, trying to sell a fake initiative when everyone watching knows it's fake and knows you're only doing it to impress the lecturer. Like there was something, there was a social block there for me, that my friends in the seats know that I'm doing this for no reason, and I don't know, I had this block, and I used to think that people that were really good at it were lacking something. and obviously it's not that, and I've learned it's not that, but I just remember feeling like that at university presenting. Obviously now I do a lot of things where I actually put myself in position where I do things where I would normally be nervous, even just like going on the radio, or I was on a panel the other day answering questions about business to a lot of people, and in the days running up to that I am nervous, but I would never not do it now because I have to challenge myself, otherwise I'd be upset with myself.
Yeah, and I think you have to put yourself in those situations. Like last year, someone asked me to like speak at the United Nations, and I was like, I can't do that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's not. I'll get so nervous because that's like speaking in front of people on steroids. And then when I did it, I was like, this is really good because I can look at everything from now on and be like, you can speak there because you did it at the United Nations, which has not happened. I still get nervous, but
it does give you a new level, doesn't it? And it's all in our heads, right?
Yeah, and I think like I spent loads of time trying to speak to other journalists and reporters who are on screen and like learn like how they cope with nerves. And a lot of them were like, don't get nervous. And I was like, but did you never? Like not even at the start. And a lot of them were like, no. So I really struggled with that because I was like, I feel like an alien. Like I feel like I just don't, like I really struggle with imposter syndrome and like no one really gets it. But I think like, maybe they don't get nervous or maybe they just don't want to say it. But I think there's a lot of people, like I didn't start sports journalism to be a presenter, and I don't want to like present a TV show. And I think a lot of people that do it, that is like their aim and their end goal. So they are just confident people, they just are naturally. So
imposter syndrome, I wanted to ask you about this anyway. So you do feel imposter syndrome from time to time?
Oh yeah, massively. And I think like it comes and goes. Like there are times where I'm like, actually no, like the actual job I'm doing, I'm so qualified for. Like I've been doing those stories for years, way before my job was created, and I know that I'm the person that should be doing those stories a lot of the time. But I'll always get it. Like when you work at such a big place and it's so like dog eat dog and competitive, like I think you'll always get it.
They say that when you've got, or you feel imposter syndrome, that you're in a place of learning.
Yeah.
So you're out of your comfort zone, but you're where you should be, but it's just new. And you're learning and overcoming any fears, and it's a really real positive thing to be in that zone.
Yeah.
It just don't feel nice, does it?
No. And I think I've never heard that, but I like that because I think like I always say to younger journalists trying to get into the industry, like keep learning, because it's so important. Like the landscape of media is changing so much, and you can't ever just like stay still and just do radio or just do TV. Like you have to keep learning new skills all the time. So I like that. I like thinking of it that way.
Let's talk about you must travel here, there and everywhere. You must meet so many fascinating people. Tell me some interesting places where you've been, events. There's got to be some highlights.
Yeah, I think actually like the Tokyo Paralympics, I went as a producer for the BBC. I think that was like an amazing experience because it was COVID, so like I guess we knew we'd never experienced anything like that. And it was just like a brilliant games, like an incredible Paralympic Games with so many great stories, and being able to be part of it, I was like, okay, cool, like I'm doing this job, and for someone to trust you enough to send you to Tokyo for 3 weeks, that was really cool. But
amazing. Tell me about some people that you've interviewed or met, or you're in the realm of like high performance sport. It's like it's fascinating.
Yeah, and do you know what? I actually think like when I think about the people I've interviewed, people always say like, who's the coolest person you've interviewed? I think for me, one of the coolest things is interviewing Jess Ennis, because I remember when I was like 13 and she was like giving me lifts back from training, and my first ever weight session, she was the one that was supervising it. Like she taught me how to squat and just things like that. And then I've interviewed her maybe like 2 or 3 times in the past few years, and I'll just be like looking at her thinking, this is crazy. Like, this is so crazy. Like, it all started in Attercliffe, and now, you know, we're in Paris at the Olympic Games, and that's insane to me, to be able to just be like, you've been a constant in my life, and, you know, I get to interview you now, and she's so lovely, and she's so like Sheffield, and yeah, that's really cool. But there's also there's a lot of people that I've interviewed Millie and Ali a few times, and I always get a bit nervous because he's not like a huge talker.
Yeah.
But actually, like, those are the interviews that I come out from, and I'm like, wow, like, I love my job, because we do, like, I've had a couple interviews with him, and we've had like incredible conversations, and I've heard him speak like I've never heard him speak before, and that's where I'm like, this is the coolest job in the world, to be able to get him to share those things. And yeah,
I think that's the beauty that's within your topic, and what you cover, like we touched on before. It's the harder conversations that are more beneficial stories.
Yeah.
You know, it must be a lot easier just to go and report on, I don't know, a result of a football game.
I don't know, that's hard as well. That's hard too, especially because, like, you've got to deal with, if you're live, like, you've got to deal with so much. But yeah, like, I find what I do easier than that. But
all right, okay, yeah.
Like, I'm going to the Euros, the women's Euros in Switzerland this summer.
Me too, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
I'm running a project with the England band. I'm running their e-commerce platform.
Wow.
We're trying to get it off the ground, and talking to a few players' agents currently.
Cool. Any Yorkshire ones?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm excited.
So hopefully that's going to come to fruition, and I'll be at the games.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So you were going over with work?
Yeah, which is crazy, because I don't know, I never thought I'd get to do something like that. So, because with the Olympics, it makes sense, because I know it so well, that sport. I'm like a big Olympics nerd. But yeah, Switzerland.
Nice. So, tell me about your, if you can remember, your first live recording compared to your most recent. Has there been some growth there?
Yeah, hopefully. I think my first live was on radio in maybe like 2019, but then I didn't do it for ages, and my first TV live was actually in the pandemic, so it was on Zoom. And
was that easier, harder?
I think it was hard because I was so nervous, but it was easier because, like, you can have a few notes on the screen.
Yeah. But
I was talking about the murder of George Floyd. Like, I was talking about something really deep, and like something that you can't mess up, and, you know, it's not like a fluffy subject, it's a big news subject. So it was amazing because I got to talk about it and tell that story, and like, I think it was a written piece that I'd done that I was like kind of promoting. But yeah, that I was very nervous. I think now, like, I try and just be myself on air. I think, like, when I was at the BBC, a lot of the time I tried to, like, look and sound like what a journalist looked and sounded like, and now I'm just like, no, I can just be myself, and that's fine. And sometimes I'll get DMs from people being like, pronounce your T's, like, which I got all summer last year. But
do you get feedback on social media? Do you get DMs?
Oh yeah. Feedback, if you and like, I'd say like 90% of it is just like perverts, like just disgusting stuff. But
really?
Yeah. But then a lot of it last summer was like, why are you talking like that? Like, pronounce your T's, where are you from? Like, what, like, just crazy stuff. And I think that kind of makes me be more confident in the fact that I am Northern, and like, people aren't used to that. There's not a lot of Northern people on the telly, especially in the news. So I loved it. I was like, I'm never gonna pronounce my T's. That's just not who I am. Like, I don't speak like that. So
why should you?
Yeah.
People are always gonna, especially on social media, tell you what they think, try to upset you. I mean, I've experienced it. Does it affect you? How do you deal with it?
It don't really affect me because, like, I've got 5 brothers, so there is nothing that someone can say to me that, like, obviously they're saying different things, like the perverts to my brothers, but like, I think I'm quite thick-skinned Do you know, like sometimes last summer someone messaged me and was like, "You're ugly," and I was like, "Just go away, like just go away." And sometimes it is really funny. Do you know what I mean? Like I've got one troll, and sometimes he's like a proper troll, and then sometimes he's really nice, and like I find it really fascinating, like what is going on in this man's brain. So I don't take it too seriously. I know like as a problem it's serious, and I think when it's racist or like super misogynistic, it is serious, but I try and just ignore it. I think people they see my job role and they just think like it shouldn't exist, right? And so I'm a bit of an easy target to some people, but I think it just comes with being on telly, you know. So
yeah, what are there any lows to the role?
I think the lows are, I think it's just a hard industry to be a part of, and I really struggle with the industry as a whole. But because I really love my job, it doesn't really affect me. It can get me down, but like it's just very competitive. And
in what way? Is there someone that could take your role? How is it competitive? Does you mean the story? Your story needs to be...
No, I think like when you're doing something that people think maybe they should be doing, or
yeah,
you know, they'd prefer to be having XYZ opportunities. I think it's hard to deal with that because sometimes like people aren't kind, and I just think like, yeah, that's a part of the industry that I just don't love, you know.
I suppose that's a low within the role, but let's flip the coin. What's the high?
I genuinely feel like every day is a high. Genuinely, like that sounds like rehearsed, but I feel that, and I think, an actual high, I think, for me was being at the Olympics last year, because there was only 2 of us reporting out in Paris for Sky Sports News, and like I just had some crazy experiences. I think being able to report on Louis Hinchliffe, the Sheffield sprinter, who was just like had an incredible season, made so much history, being able to like talk about that, like he's from 5 minutes away from me, do you know what I mean? Like that's, nothing will ever really compare to that. And also there was a moment where I was interviewing Colin Kaepernick on like a rooftop opposite the Notre Dame, do you know what I mean? And that, I think like if I had a list of people in the world that I wanted to interview, like he would have always been on top of that list. And that came from his agent trusting me and like knowing about what I'd written about before and reported on. And I just think in my job, like that was the coolest thing I ever could have done. And it got like, it wasn't like a really big long interview, but it got picked up by like the LA Times and like Sports Illustrated, and that was just crazy to me, like to be able to, for that to come from, I guess, like years of hard work for me and building that trust with people and really like representing. So that's crazy.
It's amazing. Do you ever have that conversation if you won the lottery? I always answer it I'd go to every sporting event in the world.
Yeah.
I'd just be there.
Yeah. No,
and you do it.
That's yeah. Because like I've got like a sporting event bucket list, and like I've nearly ticked them all off. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not much left on there, and that's insane to me, because I just think I'm so lucky to be able to do that with my job and travel the world. Like I love traveling, I love watching sports, so like to get paid to do that is unreal.
It's such an interesting role. I envy your role. It's
get
great.
into it.
So aside from working at Sky Sports as a reporter, you have your Brown Girl in Sport. It's like an online platform currently, building a community. Tell us about that. I mean, you work real hard and you're just putting more pressure on yourself.
Why did you do that? It's a great question. I think I set it up. I set it up like early 2023 because I'd wanted to do it for years, and I just left the BBC, so I felt like I couldn't get in trouble for it then. and I was just really tired of not seeing South Asian women in sport being represented in the media. And I was like, there are so many incredible stories of South Asian women that are not told, and I want to just like create a place to showcase those stories. So it just is like, it started as like an Instagram page and still is kind of just that, but has really, you know, built into like a physical community, and it's just the coolest thing ever. Like, so many people now like come to BGS to tell stories or like share their stories or ask for things, and being able to like connect people. Like I try and like take people to like games, so we'll get like, I don't know, Chelsea will give us like 50 tickets for a game, and being able to just physically be there, a group of like 50 brown girls and women in those spaces where we're not always in, is just really cool, and it feels like things are like changing slowly because of it.
It certainly links to your role at Sky,
Yeah.
in terms of where your passion comes from. Do you think it helps? Is Brown Girl in Sport more credible because of who you are? Or
Probably. Like, I think I've used the fact that I've got like a tiny platform, and it's a platform for the right people. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the people that follow me are interested in those kind of stories, so it's always gonna interest them. And I think just like knowing so many different people in the industry, like sometimes people email, I've got a Brown Girl Sport email, and then obviously I get all the emails because it's just me, and they're like, oh, here's like someone once emailed and was like, here's an interview we did with this journalist Miriam Walker-Khan that went on the Sky News. I was like, hi, it's me. So I think it definitely helps, yeah. And I think I've used that, you know, over the years, like being able to build those relationships with people. Like when I left the BBC, that felt like the time to do it because I had those relationships already. So, yeah.
Awesome. Right, as we round up then, I just wanted to ask you, what's the future look like for you? Do you measure success? Are you just in this role, you don't really see an exit? What's the future hold?
I'm not one of those people who like has a 5-year plan. Do you know what I mean? I think I just love my job, like I keep saying. So it's hard to really think about what comes next because I've got so many ideas that I want to get through and like pieces and docs that I want to make. I think like long term, I'd like to get into just documentary making. I think that's like my real passion.
Yeah.
But I just love telling stories. So.
That's great. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's been very interesting. I just envy your role so much.
It is cool. I'm very lucky. So, yeah.